Thank you for joining this webinar. Today is all about data apps. But what is a data app? There are general purpose data apps, such as Displayr, Q, SPSS, Excel, and Tableau. You load up your data, and if you're an expert, you can get some good insights out of them. But what we're focused on today is something different. It's about how you build a data app for a specific data set or problem. You're usually targeting a non-expert user here. It's your client or your stakeholder. You're trying to allow them to self-service, to get their own insights from the data. There are 6 basic building blocks when constructing a data app. What's the format of the data? Is it summary tables, raw data, user preferences? How's the data going to be ingested? What type of analysis do we have to do? What tools are we going to use to perform that analysis? What's the visual design going to look like? The whole engineering side of things. How do we actually get this thing to be up and on the internet so that people can log in and use it quickly? And what tools or mechanisms will be available for stakeholders to take their results from that data app? We're going to start with a simple example looking at building a dashboard using some tables stored in Excel. So it's going to measure satisfaction with various campgrounds. So I'll put a little heading in. I'm going to bring a data set in now. Now, this is a new feature for any long-time users. Here, rather than importing raw data, which is what most of our users do, we've got some cross tabs that have previously created another program, and they're showing satisfaction with 5 different campgrounds, satisfaction by various aspects of those campgrounds. I'm going to drag them onto my page, select all the data in each of the tables. And so now I have these 5 tables. Now I want to create a dashboard where the user chooses which campground they want to explore the data from. So classic way of doing that is you create a combo box, which is a technical name for one of these things where a user has various options and they choose from them. So I'll type in the names of my campgrounds. We'll make it 20 point. And in keeping with my grey design chic, I'll put this up there. All right. Now, I've built my little combo box so the user can choose things, but now what I've got to do is I've got to hook it up so that when the user changes their selection, we're going to choose to see the data from one and only one of these tables. I could do that by writing a bit of code, but there's a little pre-built feature for the point and click crowd. Let me just click that again. All right, now the way this works is, I'll scroll down, I need to tell it which table, so I'm going to take the first table, and then I'm going to give it all of the tables, one by one. Then I need to put in the names of the tables. So I'm going to go back because I typed them in before, copy them. Whoops. I'm not doing very well with my mouse control today. I'm going to copy in all of these and I'll paste it into this little field here, table names. And then the last thing I'll do is hook it up to the combo box we created before. And so now I've created a nice little basic dashboard where I can filter to the different data by changing this control, and it automatically updates. But it's not so pretty, is it? How can we make it pretty? Well, the first thing we're going to do is actually make the numbers pretty. I've got 5-point satisfaction scale. I want to create the top 2 box score. Normally in Display I drag and drop, but I've imported these as tables, so that's not going to work to merge the categories. So what I'm instead going to do, I'm going to write a little calculation, and in the little formula bar that comes at the top, I'm going to write satisfaction equals, and then we just click on the somewhat satisfied, plus on my keyboard, very satisfied, and I click calculate, and then quick as a flash, it goes and it shows me all of the individual satisfaction scores, so the top 2 box scores for my U-Bend campground here on the right-hand side of the page. Now I need to, what are we going to do now? What we'll do is let's create a little visualization to show this. I'm going to do something a bit odd. I'm just going to zoom out first. I'm going to select all of this data. I'm going to right click and go hide. And this means that when I publish the dashboard, these tabs won't be seen. I'm just going to drag them to the bottom. And now we'll build in the visualizations in the kind of the page area at the top. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a visualization called a number in oval. And I'm going to make it around 50 by 50, so I'm going to make it a perfect circle if I can control my mouse well enough. And I hook it up to the satisfaction data. And right, that was surprisingly slow. The internet sometimes makes life difficult, doesn't it? So it's pulling out the first number, which is for store overall. I'm going to make some little formatting changes. I will make it a white font. I'll make it just show a 10-point font. And I'm going to do one of the things I love to do, which is a color coding system, where I'm going to start and I'm going to give it a red if it's below 60, because that's poor satisfaction. Give orange, so you can see where I'm going here, traffic light system, if it's between 60 and 80. And if it's above 80, we're going to make it a nice green color. And so this is red. If I change it here to Pretty Beach, it's updated all the data underneath, and we're now getting the score of 87 green, which is good. Cool. You're thinking a bit basic, right? But one of my talented colleagues has created a pretty little background. These things are much easier to obviously do with ChatGPT and the like these days. Now, one kind of standard design for satisfaction and performance dashboards is you have a dashboard where you create a kind of a layout that allows you to describe each of the properties. So in this case here, the aspects of a campground, so it's store and things like that. And then you just put your little visualizations on top of it. So I'm going to send this to the back, and I'm just going to drag this store into this little circle here. Now, for those of you that are new to Displayr, one of Displayr's really cool features is it's got this workflow where you duplicate and modify something. So I'm going to right click on this first visualization I've created, and I just move it up to variety here. I'm going to resize it, and I'm just going to change it. So rather than store overall, it's going to point at variety. I'll change the form of the visualization to put it like a little bar, resize it, cool. And then I duplicate that one again. And this one here, we change to point at service. And then I choose all three of them, duplicate it again. So you can see in no time at all, we can build up an entire dashboard. I'll change this one from service to activities. Drag these two down here. All right, so we're really quickly building up a dashboard. Now, I know you've got time constraints, so I'm not going to fill in all of your time by building the rest of it, but you can see how easy it would be to finish this off. And you'll see we're now building this nice interactive dashboard, which is using the traffic light system to tell us what has changed. Now, I'm going to move on to talk about personalizing a dashboard. We just created controls so that a user can select which data they want to see. But another thing we might want to do is limit the data that different users can see. For example, we might want to make it so that only the manager of a particular dashboard can see the data for that, sorry, for a particular campground can see the data for that campground, and that none of the other managers can see the data for the other campgrounds which they don't manage. How do we do that? Well, we'll go back in here. The first thing we need to do is we need to set up our user groups. I've already done that, but I'll go into the account settings for my company settings, and you'll see down here, I've created these groups, which I just do clicking new group, and I've created one for each of my campgrounds, Cowmung, Hang Rock, Pretty Beach, Pretty Rock, and Newburn. Also with my users that I've added in, you add a user by clicking new user here, I've set them up to determine which group they have access to. So Tim Cowmung here has only been given access to, or has been put into the group called Cowmung, which means he should only be able to see Cowmung data. So that's the basic background that I've, or the user group settings I've got to get done. Now I just need to update my user interface to use that information. And the way we do that is going to put a little custom calculation in again. And this is one of those kind of things where you paste it in. And so if you can't figure it out, just reach out to the support team. You paste and you modify. You don't need to be a programmer to do it. It's pretty straightforward. What I'm doing here in this little snippet of code, it says find the users groups and just return it. And if you can't work out what group they're in for whatever reason, we're going to show them Pretty Rock. So it sees it's Pretty Rock down here. I'm just going to quickly hide that. Now, the change that I make is before, when I built this, I selected, remember I typed in this list. I'm going to get rid of that list. I'm just going to tell it to instead to take the options. So now there's only the option called Pretty Rock. But what will happen is when I publish it, which I'll do now, republish it, I'm going to copy this URL. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new window in incognito mode. I'm going to paste in the URL. And then we're going to log in as the user who's only got access to the Cowmung campsite data or campground data. Ta-da! And so, and I completed that login step 4. And so you can see here, users now logged in, can only see the Cowmung data, can't see any other data. And so we've effectively personalized the dashboard for the user. The next example we're going to look at is very much a meat and potatoes kind of dashboard, where we're going to ingest a raw data file. We're going to make it look pretty and useful. And then we'll have built a general form of report, which can be used for pretty much any type of data. Yeah, if I was a market researcher, I'd be building something a bit like this, maybe a bit more complicated for pretty much any project that I did. So I'm going to give a title. I'm going to bring in SPSS data file this time. It's got about 4,500 respondents worth of data. We will drag across question 5A, which shows how many times people ordered from different fast food outlets, and we'll look at that by month. So now I've got a really big table. Now we could try and visualize a really big table, but it's usually more useful if you kind of make the data a little more focused. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a dashboard up for a specific brand where the user can change what brand they're looking at. Just as we looked at before, we're going to create a combo box. But rather than type in the options, we're just going to link it to the table, and it will just pull out the row names from the table, which is now done. I'm going to make this one look a little bit prettier just to show you how we do that. So I'm going to change the font size to 20. I will make the border a nice little bluey color. I'll curve the border, change the padding. All right, that looks a little bit pretty, doesn't it? Now what I want to do is I want to pull out the data from this table just for Burger Shack. So I put a little custom calculation in. Right, and in the code bar or formula bar at the top, I just click on the table, I hit square bracket, and then I just click on combo box. And this tells us we're going to take out whatever rows from the table are shown in the combo box. And so now it's pulled out the Burger Shack rows. Now we're going to do a little detour. Some of our users have really big, complicated dashboards, and they're really concerned about how they can optimize. So I'm just going to show an example of how you'd optimize the performance of a dashboard. For most of you, this is completely irrelevant, but just file it away in the back of your head in case you do have a really big dashboard ever. So what we're going to do is we'll click on this output here. We're going to go into the object inspector and choose show raw output. When we do that, we get a whole lot of diagnostics, and it tells us that it takes 1500ths of a second to extract that column. That's not very much time. That's really pretty fast. But how could we make it faster? Well, let's edit the code. And I'm going to do something called using the native R interpreter, which is just a way of speeding up a calculation. And the way I'm going to do it, I'm simply going to type as array. This is in the background telling it to just ignore a whole lot of information. And you'll see now it's showing it takes 0 hundredths of a second. That is too small to measure. It's essentially instant since we've made this little modification. Now, the difference between 1500ths of a second and 0 hundredths of a second is pretty small. It's only with a really big project that you care about this kind of optimization, but you can do it. And there are lots of other kind of cool little optimization things you can do as well. If you ever find your dashboard is slow, just reach out to us. Okay, so let us now, we're going to visualize this one. We will put on a line chart. Now, you'll be very happy to know, our users out there, that I'm going to preview a feature that's going to come out later this week or early next week, which is for applying templates. So you can now customize a visualization, which you've always been able to do, but then you can save it as a template. I'm going to show you the applying as a template. So I'm going to put on something called area chart, and you'll see my prettier area chart appears. Cool, that looks nice, doesn't it? Let's try and make this look a little prettier again. Actually, before we do that, let's add some more controls to the page. So I'm going to go and select this underlying table, and I'm going to tell it that I want to put list box filters on the page, which is age, gender, location, income. And we'll move them under the combo box that we created before. I'll just resize them. Now, if I had more time, or more accurately, if you had more time, what we could do is we could style these to look like the combo box above, which would certainly make it all look prettier. But I'm just going to focus on getting them all created. And so you can see, but when I click here, we've now got this interactive dashboard where we can change the demographics and we can change the brand, and we see all of the data change. Now we're going to try and make it look a bit prettier. First thing we're going to do is we'll draw a nice little shape onto it. I'm going to give it a clear back or a white background. I will change the line color to, I'm going to change the font color as well. And so it's showing data number of times ordered in last month. I'm going to align that to the top. And we'll bring the chart to the front. Okay, that's starting to look all right. Now, I showed you about the duplicate and modify workflow again. Let's do it. So I've clicked the table, selected the visualization, done a little shortcut for duplicate, move it all down here. Now underneath, I've now got two copies of the table, and I'm just going to shrink them all to make this a little easier to play with. Now, with the second of these tables, which is linked to the second of these visualizations, we're going to change its inputs. And so I'm going to drag across question 6 for the rows and question 7 for the columns. And so now it's showing data on the occasion. It's showing column percents. I want to switch it over to row percents. Okay. And as before, it'd be very helpful to change this style of visualization. And again, I'm going to illustrate that apply template functionality, and we'll choose this to a donut. All right, cool. So we can see Lucky's Pizzas primarily at dinner time. We're going to again do the duplicate and modify workflow, duplicate everything, drag it over here to the right. Change this. The data down here is coming from this table here. So we're going to drag across to it. We're going to change in question 12. We're going to place the occasion with what they actually ordered. Automatically updates the visualization, but we want to change the styling now. And so again, I've got another template. I'm going to choose bar chart single series. So Lucky's Pizza, the mainly pizza. Let's make this look even schmicker. Got another little image that was created in the background. All these. So in no time at all, we've built this great little dashboard, which allows users to self-service. They can send the data off to Excel or PowerPoint, wherever they want. We're now going to look at a completely different example. We're going to build a time series dashboard, and here we're going to pull in data from an API. So a bit of jargon here. We've been using point and click to pull in data and manipulate the data before. API means we're going to do it by writing code. You don't need to do this. I'm just showing you that you can do it because some people want to do it. Okay, so a little heading called stock prices. Oops. Now we're going to put a little control on the page so users can input data. This time we're going to put a text box so users can just type into it. I'm going to type something into it, Amazon, drag it to the top. Now, we're going to pull in data from stock prices, but we need to know what the symbol or ticker symbol is for Amazon. I don't know that. And this is one of the areas where large language models can help us a lot. So I'm just going to click on the AI menu. We're going to do something custom. And so we're going to hook it up to the text box, which contains Amazon. And we're just going to write into the prompt. Okay, so just like you would in ChatGPT, we give it GPT, not GPT, we give it an instruction, cross our fingers, cool. And so it's found Amazon's ticker symbol. So let's put this up here. Now, as a promise, we're going to use an API, and we're going to use the API from Yahoo Finance, who publish a lot of data. So we're going to do a little custom code box, and then we'll enter our code into the little formula box that appears at the top. Now, a lot of people go, oh, I want to do point and click for my API. Look, there are a lot of times where we do build user interfaces for APIs. So for example, let's say you had your data at Qualtrics and you wanted to import that. You would just click here, add data, and you go Qualtrics and go through the menu. In the background, the code would be written. But here in this example, what I'm trying to show you is the situation where we're actually typing the code in ourselves. Now, obviously cutting and pasting it. And what this says is it says go to Yahoo Finance and pull out the data from 2020 up to today for whatever is mentioned in the AI output, which is Amazon. So we'll click calculate and we get that data. Now we want to visualize it. So let's close the code window down and a nice little time series visualization here with a dynamic window on it. So it's got this nice little window control here. And so we can see Amazon has had a pretty good last couple of years. How's Elon doing? And so it's going off, it's pulling the data. Yeah, Elon hasn't had the best last couple of years. How's Zuck doing? Whoops, typed wrong. Let's see what it does. Text. Didn't do very well. Nothing exists there. Meta, it's able to find. Cool. All right, so Zuck's having a pretty good year. Okay, so here we've built a dashboard pulling in time series data via an API. The next example, we can do something really different again. In this next example, we're going to do a segment typing tool. So the previous things we've just shown visualizations and a basic tabulation filtering. Here we're going to do our analysis via machine learning. Show you how we do that. Now I've got a data set here showing some information about fast food market. I want to do a special type of model known as let me change my notes, a support vector machine. Now, as you can tell, I had to look that up. How do I do a support vector machine in Displayr if I can't even remember the name of what the feature is called? I'm glad you asked. I click the search box here and I just type support vector and the little yellow things here guide me through. Cool. Now, this model here, we're going to predict what segment they're in based on some demographics and some behavioral information. And it gives us a little predictive model here. But the whole goal with a segment typing tool is you want to create a data app where a user can type in the characteristics of the person and work out what segment they're in. So let's build that. How do we do it? We just click our little model here and we just go into the object inspector and find this thing called create simulator. And it's going to build it for us. So it's telling us that if, for example, somebody is in a ordered by drive-through, spent $2 a month and are in this age group and income groups, they're in the pure convenience segment, but it's a bit marginal. Um, so what we're going to do is we're going to change it to take out. We're going to assume they had delivery and they're spending $30, $40. And now we predict that they're in the discounts and deals segment. Cool. All right, so that's a simple example. We're going to return now, though, to a slightly complicated set of topics. Again, we're relating to performance. So sometimes with really large documents, you're trying to find additional ways to speed up the experience for users because some calculations can be very, very slow. And I'll show you an example of this. This is a really large simulator, which was constructed just as I showed you before, where I built the complicated model and I clicked the create simulator and built it. Then obviously it tarted it up quite a lot to look pretty. Now, if you look at this one here, I want you to notice something here. We've got these two Chinese restaurants. They're both, one's at $30, one's at $20. The one at $20 has got a much smaller market share. What will happen if it drops its price? I'm going to change its price from $20 to $10. And it's going to take a while to think because it's built on this massive conjoint hierarchical Bayes model. So well, actually, that was really fast. That was surprising. Let me make a different change. Let's assume that its food rating is 4.7. 1 elephant, 2 elephant, 3 elephant, 4 elephant, 5 elephant, 6 elephant, 7 elephant. Elephant's Australian for Mississippi if you're trying to figure out how to count seconds, by the way, if you're not Australian. Now, so the first change I made was instant. The second change I made, it took 6 seconds. What's the difference? The difference is due to an engineering technique called caching, or sometimes caching, going on in the background. What Displayr is doing is when it detects certain slow calculations, rather than recalculate them each time, it saves the result. And so the first thing I showed you was a simulation I'd run a little earlier before I got on the webinar. And so rather than redo all the math, Displayr just remembered that number and returned all those results and returned it to us. And Displayr's got lots of different ways that it performs caching to make things go faster. If you're an advanced dashboard builder and you only want to do this if you're building something really big and complicated, you can actually do various things to control the caching or the caching so that you can make it feel faster for users by avoiding them waiting for calculations. Lots of different ways of doing that. That's one kind of way that you can engineer your dashboard to be a little bit better. Another really useful technique, which we've recently introduced, is the ability to set schedules via point click. Now, in the time series dashboard that I built for you earlier, we set it up so that when the user changes the name of the company, it causes the data to update. Turns out that weird internet error. Let's click calculate again. I hope Nestle's okay. Okay, so we just saw a hallucination for AI. He got the wrong symbol. I think this is the correct symbol from the Swiss stock market. And here's my wife's superannuation. Very sad. Anyway, we've now seen it kind of update, but these kind of updates only happen when the user clicks buttons to do it. We might want to have something where it updates every day. How would we do that? We would just click on the calculation that we want to update. We'll go to the General tab here and we'll click Schedule Plus. And then we can control when it does stuff. So I'm going to say I want it to every 1 day. I want it to rerun and publish the result. And so if you combine that with caching, it can be very powerful, right? So let's say you have results that you know change every night at midnight when new data is uploaded. You set it to update and to perform all those calculations at midnight. So when a user comes in, they're already there for them and they don't have to wait. So we've been looking at how you can build bespoke data apps in Displayr, and we went through a whole series of interesting problems. What questions have you got? Please type them into the questions field in GoToWebinar and I'll see if I can help. And the first question is from Bob, and Bob says, the AI example wasn't that interesting to Bob because he's not really interested in stock prices. I hear you, Bob. So what I'll show a kind of a more interesting kind of example, more kind of typical thing. I'm going to bring in a data set and yeah, I've got some data on sentiment for Microsoft. So we'll build another page. Okay, and if I look at this data here, let's drag it onto the page, have a look at it. Okay, so I've got all these sentiment scores. Let's say I want to use AI to analyze them. What I'm going to do is I will click the AI menu and go custom. And it's hooked up automatically to what I had selected here. And I'll give it a little prompt. Please. Each response. All right. So we've given it a very specific instruction. I hope this will work well, but you get the idea, right? We can do anything that you would want to do with AI in the user interface, pretty much anything. The key point or the value that we're creating here is the ability that you can hook up the AI, in this case it's using ChatGPT, to your data as a part of building a dashboard, which I think is a pretty useful workflow and a pretty interesting workflow. Now, while we wait for it, because it's got to do a bit here, it's got to send each individual response off and do its sentiment. Douglas says, hello, Douglas. Great tool. Thanks for sharing. How can you share a dash with the client and how would they access it? All right. So the way you do that is when you build something, you go publish, publish to the web, and you can either give them anyone with a link, in which case you just give them this URL, and it's an unguessable URL and it's not indexed, so it's pretty secure. Or you can set up logins and passwords for your users, and then you just give them the URL, and then you set up their account names and things like that. Or alternatively, you can hook it up via SSO, single sign-on, that is, so it's automatically done. All right, and so here you can see we've got the sentiment scores. Zoom in a little bit, and so that's pretty cool. If we scroll down here, we can see, for example, 21, Evil Empire minus 0.9. So you really can build your own software tools using Displayr to do this kind of problem. What are questions we've got? Do I have to write code to do calculations? Is the question from Graham. Oh, this is an interesting one. Let me show you an example of something. This is one. I've pre-prepared this one before. It's one I used to give as a demonstration. So hopefully I can remember it. So we've got some data here, which I'll load up on. So I've got some data here on bubblegum flavors. And what I want to do is and I'll add it as a table showing the raw data. All right, so this is the kind of data that you use in turf analysis or reach analysis. For each row, we've got a person's data. So the first row is telling us that this person one likes all of the flavors. So one means they like, except they don't like strawberry, they don't like apple, and so on. Now, we're going to calculate reach. We're going to start doing this by, we're going to put another little combo, click the wrong option still. In this case, a list box, and we're going to hook the list box up to the data. And it's just populated with the flavors. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to allow it to have multiple selections. And then I'm going to calculate so that we're going to create a new table, which is just going to select the columns from this table underneath. You'll see why we're going in a second, but I use this select tool that I showed you a little earlier today, and we click it in the flavors, and we want select columns by control. Okay. And so you can see it's now taking out the columns that we have selected. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I want to calculate if somebody has liked either of the flavors. Using math, that's a max calculation. So I just have this output here, and I just go into the calculate menu, and I'm just going to choose maximum, take the maximum for each row. And then I'm going to do another calculation here. So you can see all of the standard maths you want to do is shown in the menu here. So I'm going to take the average. 0.6 it says, and so let's put a little decimal point on it. Okay, so this is telling us that 63% of people like either sour or cola. If I swapped out sour for classic, what's my reach going to be? Oops. 75%. And so we built a reach calculator where a user can experiment with the data and they can play around so we've done some reasonably complicated calculations here without writing any code to calculate reach. I may as well finish this example as I'm in it. I'm going to put these little tables at the bottom. This guy here, I'm going to turn into a beautiful Venn diagram. And you think, why is he doing that? I'm doing that because I've got a beautiful picture. Clever, huh? All right. Now, next thing I'm going to do is, again, without writing code, I'm going to go page design and create something called a dynamic text box. And what I'm going to hook this up to is I'm going to tell it I want to use a calculation to take the average, and it's a percentage, and put a little prefix. And we'll customize the appearance of that. We use some kind of bubblegummy like color. Is that going to work? Too faint. Take this to the bottom and we'll hide all of these. Okay, so now I built this cool little interactive dashboard and we didn't write any code at all to do it, where we can change the different flavors, the Venn diagram updates, and the reach is done. What other questions have we got? Ashley, can filters sit outside the page in the toolbar at the top? Yeah, there are various ways you can construct filters. So here I've got them shown where I put them on the page. I could have just graphically taken the approach of putting them at the top, for example, and drawing them as combo boxes and making it look like they're separate. I can do a completely different thing though. Whoops, moving too much. So that'd be one way to visually do what you're talking about, Ashley. I'll move that down. Just formatting wise, create line. There's a completely different way I could do it though, which is I could select the variables here and get them and click this little plus button here to make them go as filters. And then what I'll do, and this is going to look hideous, but I'll still show it to you anyway, just because I just want to show the functionality. And so there are now two completely different types of filters we're going to see on this very ugly page when I publish it. So there's ones that we can control here, but there's also ones at the top here that we can choose from. So it's a different type of filter that you can create. And we can, now these are list boxes, we could do them as combo boxes, so it just shows what's selected and you don't have to see them all expanded out. Next question we've got, give me a second, I've got a little bit of a, next question we've got, again, for if I add a page filter, and then later add some more tables visualizations, how do I hook up the existing filter to the new tables? Great question. So when I built this example, you might remember that I clicked on the table before I went into applying the filters. And having clicked on the table, I then, let me, example, I then went filter thing and I clicked list box filters. Now, if I create a completely new table, which I'll do this now, it's not going to have any filters applied. What I need to do though is I just need to go into the filters thing here and I can choose this list box checkbox, which is the thing that's automatically created, and now it'll be whatever filters are applied by selection will be done. Excuse the grammar there, hopefully got the point. Now that's all of the questions that people have asked. So thank you very much. If you have additional questions, send them through to us at support@displayr.com. And for all of our users out there, thank you so much for being our users. Bye now.